Honorable, was it Shivambo? Yes.
No, thanks, Chair. Do you know in virtually all the public hearings, we had submissions from the Khoi and San people, or people who refer to themselves as the Khoi and the San, and making the same call that the political territory called South Africa today is rightfully a territory of the Khoi and the San people. My confusion about that is, how do you determine that? Because the borders which we call South Africa today are colonial borders. Where do you draw the line? Like Cecil John Rose went to establish colonial outposts in what we call Zimbabwe and Zambia today. It's a recent past phenomenon. It's not a thing that has been there for a very long time. Just which part of South Africa do you say we should, or if the argument sustains, is rightfully belonging to the Khoi and the San people? And why the need to want to break down or to like stratify indigenous Africans and say, no, we are not, because like in many instances, it may not be you, Mr. Williams, but in many instances, the submissions that came from the Khoi and the San, they were saying that even the population that we refer as Africans cannot claim this land. Like there is a deliberate dividing notion, a narrative that says that we are not same indigenous people. There is Khoi people this side and the San, and then there is Africans there. I want to get to understand that notion of where does it come from and where do you draw the line in terms of all of those issues. Can we please then get that in terms of the clarity, because it then deals with the land question, so that when we deal with these issues, we're able to factor that in. But also, I check quickly, I'm honestly interested in terms of what practically do you want us to do as this legislative body in terms of what you say is non-recognition of the Khoi and the San people. What practically should we do? Should we change the constitution? Which section to deal with that? Should we pass separate legislation? What practically is to be done?
Honorable Williams, it's another question that is not part of the subject. So please don't answer that one. It's going to take our time. It's a long debate. Honorable Mulder.
I'm going to try my best to ask a relevant question.
I'll pray for you.
Now, I thank you, Chairperson. I want to thank Mr. Williams for a very interesting presentation. If I may ask, the slides that you are showing is not part of the presentation that we've got. It would be very nice if we could get a copy of what you've got there, if possible. Now, the question I would like to ask, it's quite clear from your presentation that you don't see land only as economic commodity. You see it as more than that, something that can belong to a community. And then you refer to section 25(7) of the Constitution, and you suggest that that should be scrapped. And the reason being that it gives a specific cut-off date, 1913, and you feel that if that's gone, then you can be accommodated. But you also referred in your presentation to section 235 of the Constitution that deals with self-determination. And section 235 specifically says that it should be implemented in terms of national legislation, and that national legislation has never happened in the last 24 years. Don't you think, in terms of what you want, because you're being asked in terms of alternatives, that what you need can be addressed by way of that kind of legislation in terms of section 235 instead of an amendment of section 25? Thank you.
Honorable Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. If there's a very curious question, which part of South Africa are we looking for? I think when we started out, Chairperson, we were abundantly clear that there is this paranoia when the Khoi San community begins to exert themselves in terms of who we are as a cultural community and as an indigenous African community, for that matter. There is always from our fellow indigenous African people from Nguni Bantu origin, there is this frenzy that we want to dislodge them, which means we want to chase them out of the country, and we are saying that they are not part of this country. Now that's a very unfortunate perception or notion or understanding of what we are talking about. It cannot be. We are very clear that we know that we've got family who are from the Bantu community, from the Nguni community. It would be absurd to try and come to a conclusion that this land, South Africa, exclusively belongs to the Khoi and the San community. So we want to be absolutely clear that we are not part of any of those discussions. Yes, we know there are radical people out there in the Khoisan community, as in every organization and every community, that says that the Bantu and Nguni people just came in here to take the land. Right? We are not part of that conversation. We are part of the conversation that says South Africa must be honest with itself, and in the Constitution, let's talk about the practical stuff, that in the Constitution, in particular in Chapter 1, must recognize that the Khoisan is the first nation. So that's what we are asking this portfolio committee to do, and we're asking Parliament to do. That is the responsible thing to do. If this government is as responsive to the cries of the people as we have seen during the hearing, it's the responsible thing to do, to recognize us as the First Nation people. And we're saying First Nation does not mean number. It doesn't mean that we are saying that we are first. It's undisputed that we are the First Nation. There's nobody that can dispute it. Nobody can ask when whoever came to the most southern tip of Africa, who they found here. It is clear there's empirical evidence, and the history that is written, most of that history has not been written by us. And there's argument that history has been written by colonialists, and it is true. But there's enough proof. There's DNA proof that we've got that clearly locate us with amongst the Khoi and the San community. So we don't want to be part of the people that want to bring a wedge between us as indigenous people. All right. We think that it is unfortunate that there are people like that, but there's no argument, there's no thing in our mind that we are arguing against indigenous people of Bantu and Nguni descent. These are people that belongs to Africa. You correctly, I brought this map up there, to put the map up there, because we are absolutely clear that the borders that is now called South Africa, these are colonially imposed borders, that we've got to fight these borders with everything that is within us, because we don't believe that the Nguni and the Bantu people are migrated to South Africa. We don't believe that. We believe that they drifted, because Africa was one country. It was not a continent, it was a country. So we're clear in terms of that. I hope that that answers. And then maybe, Chairperson, I just want to conclude with this. You keep on hearing, in particular from the EFF. The EFF talks about African. All right? The ANC also made, we think, also made a very big mistake. Because the ANC talks about, especially in the Morogoro conference in 1969, talked about blacks in general and Africans in particular. And EFF also talks about Africans. And when they talk about Africans, Chairperson, they refer to Africans as people who are from Nguni and Bantu descent. Now that's it's an unfortunate statement that we have derived, and we have come to a place where we have dislodged a very integral part of the indigenous African people, which is called the Khoi and the San people, when we refer to Bantu and Nguni people exclusively as Africans. We've got to revisit that. It is a mistake. This country cannot continue with what we call racial categorization. We are saying, Chairperson, racial categorization is perpetuating racism. For as long as we put people in boxes of white and black and colored, that's how long we are perpetuating racism. We are the First Nation. You are asking who we are. We are your father and we are your mother. You are coming from us. That's who you are. You are our children. So we must stop this thing of racially categorizing people. This is the elephant in the room. I thank you, Chairperson.
I think that's the best way to conclude it, Mr. Williams.